Hey Bree, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you, man?
I'm good. So I'll introduce you. You are Dr. Bree White now. When you came to the gym back in the day, we knew you as Bree. And so if you could just give a brief intro on what you do, who you are, where you live, maybe. That's kind of weird, but
Sure.
yeah, a
Uh,
brief description of who you are, and then we'll get started.
yeah. My name is Bree White. I am an ER doc. I was from Indianapolis originally, and then trained in Oklahoma, and came back up to St. Louis, where I'm practicing. I would say more in a rural hospital environment. So, yeah, that's it.
That's awesome. Um, are you still working out? Are you still into fitness?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm still doing CrossFit. I usually do that like 2 or 3 days a week. I fell into trying Olympic weightlifting and have
Yeah.
been, I would say, mostly doing strength training for the past couple of years. I still do I still do CrossFit minus some of the gymnastics work just because I'm working through like some shoulder issues, primarily probably from trying to snatch.
For sure.
Yeah, like on a, my shoulders are not meant to be necessarily a load bearing joint. So I'm doing that, but yeah, I'm still in the gym. And then I picked up, I've been kind of messing with jujitsu and
Oh
trying to go
wow.
to yoga a little bit. So when I can,
Did you
yeah,
do
I'm
a
essentially at
did you
work.
do a
And
weightlifting competition recently?
yeah, I've done a couple. They're very like minor. And I mean, I'm at the very bottom of it's humbling. It's
That's
very
okay.
humbling. There's
Yeah.
there's some kind of school that lifts there, and I remember my very first meet, I was the second lightest person, because these girls are women, they're
Right.
big, and almost got outlifted by a 14-year-old who
Oh
was
wow.
casually snatching like 150.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so yeah,
That
I was just
yeah.
like, okay, like, but it's a lot of fun to lift in front of people and to try something that, very low stakes. It's not like I'm gonna go anywhere with it, but they're complex moves, and I'm fascinated by them.
Yeah, that's awesome. What made you decide to get into jujitsu?
So I've always watched, like, UFC, and I mean, ever since it was like a very low rated type thing, and I was just fascinated by it, and so I just didn't have the time, or really mostly the money in medical school,
Right.
well, money and time to try it, and so now that I'm in that attending life, I decided to go into it and try. It's intimidating. I see why a lot of people don't stick with it. You really do have to be willing to go in and kind of just get your ass beat every day.
Oh
Like,
yeah. So
and just lose and lose and lose and lose.
yeah. So I did it when I was probably 21, 22, and some
Oh,
guy,
really?
yeah, he challenged me to like a 90-day, go do it for 90 days and see
Sure.
how it goes and try to do like a competition or something. And so I went, and they gave me this bright orange, or is like a neon yellow, I believe, shirt that said
Huh.
newbie on it. And so everyone so everyone, when you go in and you start, rolling around, everyone knew like, hey, this is the new guy. Don't like fuck him up too bad, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
and so I go in. Well, I didn't wrestle in high school. I never really fought, um,
Right.
as a sport.
Yeah,
And
same here.
so it was like, so when you go in, even if you've wrestled before, you almost have this toolbox of things that like, hey, if
Sure.
he puts me in this position, I need to get out of it.
Right.
Well, I didn't have anything in my toolbox. I was coming in with an empty toolbox. And so the one thing that we learned that day, that's all I knew. And
Yep.
so it was maybe like 3 sessions in, and I was like choked by this guy's legs, and my head
Man.
is just like laying on his stomach. And I'm like, this is
Oh.
not where I wanted to be on a Tuesday afternoon.
Right.
And so
Oh.
I did not make it through the 90 days. That is one
I
thing I
did
did not
not make
finish. I'm like,
it.
I just wasn't mentally in a space to complete that challenge. But
Yeah, I
yeah, and I
mean,
never went back. I didn't even get the gi or anything. I didn't even make it that far. I just went in with
I
my gym
mean,
shorts and my yellow shirt, and I mean, they were I got thrown over this guy's head. I couldn't do anything. It was
I
bad.
feel bad for some of the guys. Like I at least like when I'm being a new chick, like it's mostly men, obviously. Which is just, I mean, it's just incredible. It's very humbling in and of itself. But at least
Yeah.
like I can tell that they kind of take it easy on me. Whereas like if I were a guy, they would probably not take it as easy. But I still like yesterday. I thought this guy was like baiting me, and he left like his arm open, and I was like, is he gonna let me have the arm? And so, I'm messing with it because I'm an idiot. Didn't pay attention to my neck. I mean, he just I almost went out so fast. It was like that. I was like, oh, I mean, my
Yeah.
still hurts. Like I was just like, oh God, I'm sorry. And I was like, I was almost gone. Like,
Yeah.
It's very different, but I love it because it just requires so much focus. And I've never done anything like that. But I mean, it's just
I'm probably in a better headspace now than I was at 22.
Yeah.
Like I had a really bad ego, and I'm like,
yeah, for sure.
This is not good. But yeah, that's awesome that
Yeah,
you're trying that again. How long have you been doing it, you said?
I've probably only done it for like 6 months. I'm a one stripe white belt. So I've done it for like, I don't know, 5 or 6 months. I'm able to get in like once or twice a week. When I started, I was going in like 4 times a week. That's too much. There's always some kind of like little injury or sprain or whatever. So I usually about once a week. Keeps it fun, but also kind of keeps me safe because I am, 36. Like I don't need a head injury. I have a big girl job. I can't like afford a TBI.
Yeah, for sure.
I spent like $500,000 on this brain. Like,
yeah,
I don't need to be like trying to fight like some thick neck 250-pound dude.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if you're gonna go into a competition.
Well, we'll see how it goes. I'm so like, it's so new and I'm so dumb with it. I mean, it's just incredible. I can barely replace my guard. They were like, you should try it. You should try it. But I'm like, let's just see. Let's see how it goes. Let's see how it goes. Yeah. I mean, it might be different fighting women. I might have more of a chance, I guess. But right now, like, there's zero chance that I'm winning anything.
For sure. That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
So outside of jiu-jitsu and doing a little bit of weightlifting and CrossFit, you're full-time in the ER.
Yep.
How many days a week are you working? Do you guys work a lot?
I mean, so I initially, when I came out of residency, I started full-time, which is you're contracted for about 123 hours a month. And so that would work out to like 3 shifts a week, 3 12s anyway.
Yeah.
And so usually I'm right around, I would say right around there. I usually do about 10 or 11 shifts a month. I stopped doing full-time just because they really can kind of jack you around on a schedule. And so I have more freedom when I'm just like part-time, and I'll just tell them kind of when I'm available to work. And if they have shifts, then like, great. I mean, and if not, then I also don't care because I'll go to the gym and do the things I want to do for 5 or 6 hours. So
for sure,
the money, I would make a lot more money if I were probably full-time, but to me, like it's not worth it. And if I can go do stuff that I really enjoy, like lifting or jujitsu or yoga, or be with my friends and family, then I'm going to do that as much as possible and, work enough to get by.
Yeah. Do you find that
you're probably working constantly?
No,
I would say yeah.
I like sit in front of my computer a lot. I do a lot of business work.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to it, like
definitely.
I own a gym, so it's fun, like it's like,
for sure.
Like people are working out and it's fun and it's not a super high stress environment,
Yeah.
Like you're probably in. Do you find that people are coming to the ER over do more people come to the ER for just like miscellaneous, just like backaches versus a car crash?
So it's interesting. I think when we did like our training, when you pick like ER, you're like, I'm going to see everyone's going to be sick. I'm going to like see people, perimortem and like save them. And I would say that that's probably, maybe 1% to 2% of patients that you see, depending on where you work. If you work in an urban environment, you'll probably, see like 10% of patients that are near death, that you'll be able to help. But the ER, I think increasingly the reason people are burnout and leaving is because it's become sort of a social net for the problems that society can't fix or isn't fixing. So, I mean, we get like, I would say a huge portion of people that like are drunk and need to go to jail, like the jail's afraid to take them because if something were to happen, so they like bring them into the ER to be evaluated for being drunk. Like, I mean,
Right.
people will come in for like a hangnail, like it's just crazy. There's a mix. I mean, if you had to see everyone who was so sick all the time, it would be horrifically stressful, and you probably wouldn't be able to do very well if every single one of my patients was like near death. So it's good to have like a mix of people that aren't sick, that you can kind of rotate through. But there's definitely some downsides when you're just like, it's incredible what people do come in for. Like,
Yeah.
whereas like, you and I, like, we would never go to the ER,
Right. Well, like people are fascinated when I tell them, I say, I can't tell you who my doctor is. This is probably bad, like I can't tell you the last time I went. I can't tell you who they are. I don't
Right.
like I told Leah the other week, like I wasn't feeling well. And I'm like, I don't even know like who I would call. Like I don't even know I don't even know who
Do
my
we have an
primary.
office? Yeah.
I know, like where do I go? Yeah.
Where do I go?
Yeah, I couldn't
I
even
mean,
tell you. I think I went to it. I mean, I used to get checkups or physicals or whatever. Like I used to
sure.
go and do that. I get like my blood work done now. Like once a year
Oh,
I'll go
good.
and get my blood work
Yeah.
done. Make sure that, everything's legit. I read it myself, right? Like
Yeah.
and then
I
if
mean,
something looks
yeah.
bad, then I'll Google it.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. You could just Google it, and then if all else falls through, I mean, you know where I'm at. Like, I would say the
yeah,
majority of my like Instagram DMs are like people being like, "Hey, my doctor will never get back to me, and this is going on. What should I do?" Which is fine. Like, I'm happy to help
yeah.
like people, but it's funny that it's so funny how the medical system is right now. I mean, I say funny,
Yeah.
it's actually terrifying, but yeah, I
I
saw.
know. It's well, so yeah, so then I was like, well, maybe I'd be better off if I went to like a telehealth. Like I had a
Sure.
online like telehealth. And then CrossFit, they probably don't even want me talking about it, but now they're trying to have their whole like healthcare.
I
Like,
saw that.
did you see that? Like a whole
I watched like
healthcare
a
system.
portion of that video.
Yeah, it's like crowdfunding is what it is. So it's almost
Yeah,
like if there's enough people in our network, then like let's say we pay $55 a month and then someone in the network needs like actual care,
sure.
then they say like, hey, we're charging everyone $200 this month. So and so came down with whatever, right? And so then it's like
Interesting.
it's almost like a crowdfunding. I think some like larger companies have it,
Makes
almost like a
sense.
crowdfunding network to where that's how their healthcare is provided, or unions I think sometimes will have it.
Yeah,
But CrossFit's trying to do that, right? So they're like, hey, we're gonna have
yeah,
our own not health care, but their
right.
own
Health network. It's your own
health.
PPO through
Yeah,
CrossFit.
yeah, through CrossFit. But
Yeah,
people have to look at CrossFit as because we can give it to our coaches, and then we can also in the future we're going to be able to give it to our members,
to
so
members.
that to the
Interesting.
members, and so then members could be a part of this network. And so they come to the gym, they work out, and then also, by the way, we can also eliminate your health insurance.
Yeah.
It's weird, right?
I mean, I'm just seeing like business opportunity here. I could just be like a CrossFit doctor.
Right. And so
this
then,
sounds
yeah, and so
this
then there's
sounds
like,
great.
yeah, and so then there's people that are just coming on as like telehealth type doctors through this
Yeah,
network. And obviously they want people who are healthy and working out, and because they can't
yeah.
just be funding all these people with all these problems. So there's a screening that I'm sure people would have to go through in order to make it work. But I think people need to change their image of what CrossFit is, right? And like it's not just snatching and pull-ups, it's like this lifestyle and trying to become healthy and things like that. But
Right.
um
Right.
yeah, it's an interesting concept that they're trying to do right now.
Yeah, I saw.
So
I liked their. I liked what they were saying to remove themselves from the disease process. Like
yeah,
with CrossFit in and of itself, and I think that's probably the most. I think the most important thing that I see is I see how broken the system is and how it's just not working. And I think for me, like I'm willing to pay the money per month because the alternative is like it's so expensive to be sick, and obviously there
yeah,
are people who have terrible luck, but for the most part in the ER I'm not seeing people who work out 5 to 6 times a week. You know what I mean? Like
right,
I can't think of the last time I saw someone in the ER who was somebody working out 5 to 6 times a week that was in there for chronic disease. Like you get trauma
right.
and somebody in an unfortunate car accident or something like that. But
When
it's very interesting.
when you say the system's broken,
Yeah.
what do you?
So I mean like with the ER one, it's overcrowded. It's completely overrun. Two, the medical beds are all full. So like, there are not enough nurses. I mean, you probably saw that like during COVID, there was like a nursing shortage and we really haven't recovered since. And I think as more and more people leave the medical field, um, we have less and less people obviously to work. And so there's fewer people to work for the same number of sick people. And then obviously I think, at least to me, America seems to be getting sicker. I mean, we see more diabetes, more obesity, more heart disease. I mean, it just seems to be on like the incline. I think I was reading something that even said like our life expectancy is sort of stalled in terms of how long people are living. And so the system in and of itself just can't support the number of people that are in it anymore. And we just
Right.
see the amount of sickness that we see is so overwhelming. That the best way to be in the medical system is not at all, and the best avoidance for doing that is eating clean foods and then and moving and exercising. I mean, because if once you're in it, it's almost like you can't get well. Like we do
Right.
so many amazing things as doctors, but like people just don't get well a lot of times when they're in it, and a lot of it comes down to like just chronic disease.
Right. Do you think that there's any way in the future that we'll ever be able to bridge the gap between the fitness world and the medical world? Like, I feel like right now it's just like polar opposites just getting pulled farther and farther apart because,
Yeah.
I feel like CrossFit had this image of like that's what their goal was, right? Like they
Right.
started, we're gonna fight chronic disease,
Yeah.
we're gonna,
Yep.
and that's what
We're
we're
going to
going
take
after. And
pounds
then
off of people. Yeah.
yeah, and then we're just gonna get everyone healthy, and we're gonna be the answer for that. And then
Hmm.
we're gonna start attacking these big companies that are, making
Yeah.
everyone obese. And that was just kind of the mission like 10, 15 years
Yeah.
ago. And then all of
So
a sudden,
true.
it was this image that CrossFit is a sport. And it's like we
Yes.
have competitive athletes. And then it was almost like this mission that started like, hey, we're fighting chronic illness, just
Interesting.
kind of went away, right?
Kind
But
of went
that's like
away.
why that's why CrossFit got started, was because that's what we were going to do. And not we, but I'm saying that, we're the
Yeah. The
very last.
community.
Yeah, the community,
Yeah.
like that was the mission. And then, through media or whatever, social media, everything
Hmm.
turned to the sport.
So
And so
true.
now I'm just wondering, I felt it back in like 2014, like, hey, maybe this is the bridge. But now it just seems like everything's so far apart. And it's like with, fitness and the medical things and weight loss drugs and you know what I mean? Like all kinds of
Yeah.
things.
Oh man, we could talk about weight loss drugs.
Let's go. Let's
I
go.
mean, yeah, I mean, I guess in answer to your question, I keep hoping so. I think one of the biggest problems is there's I think a few. The first is like how to get it to pay. In a system where everything has to be profitable in order to like be around, I think is like how can companies get it to be profitable to get people involved in fitness. So I think that's kind of like the first. It's going to be difficult to figure that out. And then the second one is like I guess where I see it the most is like we've seen like incentive based care which seemed like a good idea at first. But so a lot of people were like, hey, listen, we'll give people discounts on like their health insurance and like the cost of medicine if they like do these things where like they work out at this gym or they like show us that they're eating clean or whatever. And so we've tried all of that, I think, as a medical community, thinking like on the outside it seems like a great idea. It's like perfect. People will buy into this. It doesn't work at all. It doesn't work at all. They've tried over and over. And what's interesting is I think that's twofold. One, it just from a basic human like concept, it is difficult to get. You cannot force people to be motivated or to care about their health. You just can't force people. Like usually when people start to care, it's either because they've built the good habits or they were in that environment, or two, like they had something happen where they were like, I have to change or I'm going to die. And then the second problem is there are obviously a lot of disease processes that happen in an environment where it's very hard to get out of. So we know that like poverty in like certain areas are really stricken by a lack of fitness. And so those are like processes that you're fighting against like the social aspect of, I guess, unwellness as well.
Right.
So it's twofold. One, if we could get people to be motivated, how do we do that? And then two, for people who are really entrenched in areas where there are social limitations to disease, like how do we battle that as well? I think it's going to require a lot of change, and medicine in and of itself is going to have to be better too. I mean, when I went to medical school, we spent a lot of time learning about like obscure diseases we would never see, memorizing like biochemical pathways. We never really spent a lot of time like trying to be like, how can I be someone who inspires others to take charge of their health, and how can I educate people, and how do we increase health literacy of Americans, which is, I mean, literacy in Americans is poor to begin with, but health literacy is even worse. Right. How do we fight all of that? I would love to see the bridge, but I think it's going to require like multiple disciplines, I think, to come across to try to get it done. I loved CrossFit's initial goal there. It is interesting to see that they've changed so much.
Yeah, and I don't know that their mission's ever changed. It's just the way the public, you know what I mean? It's the way the public perceives it, as people aren't coming in here thinking this is it's almost like, hey, I'm coming in here and I'm working out and I'm doing CrossFit. Not, this is my place that I'm going to come and get healthy and get educated on nutrition.
Right.
Like something happens and they're like, oh, I need to lose weight. It's like they go to their doctor and then they come back and they're like, this is what they said, or they're on medicines or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
And so, it's just an interesting spot. And I've always seen CrossFit as that, but it's really hard to explain to people to like sit down and talk to them. And then like, as a doctor going through schooling, how much nutrition do you guys actually?
None.
I mean, like
almost none. I mean, I remember there was one afternoon that we spent about nutrition and food, and I mean, I think you absorb a little bit in terms of just learning certain things, but in terms of like how much nutrition do we learn? Zero. I mean, pretty much zero, which is again like one of the biggest flaws in medical education that has to evolve. I mean, your patients don't care if you know about like some obscure disease that you're going to refer somebody to if they have a problem. Like, we need to be able to explain to people what is good food and what to eat. And if there's anything I've had to learn from nutrition, it's like I have to self-study it, and which I did, and I try to now, because we didn't learn anything that was like that. We didn't learn about functional movements. We didn't learn. I mean, it's just crazy. It's really eye-opening.
Yeah, that's an interesting. But again, I don't have the answer for it. I really don't. I wish I did, but there's just, I feel like I'm battling all the time. People go to their doctor and then they come to me and they're like, well, this is what the doctor said. I'm like, I get why your doctor said that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I get it.
Give me like an example. What do you think? Is there like a misconception that happens? Or like if somebody goes and says like, well, so-and-so did this, like from your perspective, you work in the fitness community, what do you see in the medical community that comes across where you're like, oh, that's kind of incongruent with,
So like I believe that a lot of metabolic type diseases can be prevented through regulating your blood sugar through nutrition.
Sure.
So like
Absolutely.
um but understanding, what you can do to regulate your blood sugar is huge when it
Yeah.
comes to just like a basic level of what's going on in the human body. But people will go to their doctor and they'll be like, "Hey, what's going on?" And they'll be like, "Oh,
Hmm.
like you've got high blood pressure, or you've
Sure.
got, you know, your blood sugar is all over the place because I took this blood
Hmm.
draw and, you know, I mean, you did it
Right.
once and you don't know what they ate the day before, and
Right.
it could be all over the place. And so then, they're taking some advice, or maybe they get put on some medicine
Hmm.
to kind of regulate what that is. And I'm like, if you just kind of regulate your blood sugar for maybe 3 weeks, we probably can
Right.
fix this. Um,
Absolutely.
but again, I'm not the guy that can say like, hey, I'm just like a CrossFit coach, right? And so I'm like,
Right.
so it's
Fair. Fair. Yeah. I
so I'm
mean,
like the CrossFit, like I can say it, but the
yeah.
perception is gonna be like, or
Maybe.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna
I'm
do
gonna have to
some
listen to my
research.
doctor.
I'm gonna have to listen to my doctor on this one. I'm like, well, I'm just talking about food right now. And they're like, I know, but I would say that
Well.
that's like a big one. Or um there's some like autoimmune type stuff that feel like
Hmm.
could be prevented um long term if people could wrap their head around nutrition a little bit.
Hmm.
Um
I agree.
and so, but again, I think a lot of these metabolic diseases are kind of stemmed through poor nutrition for like a long period of time, lack of
Yeah.
exercise,
And lack of
um,
movement.
lack of movement and stuff like that. Um, and then yeah, and then we can even go into like the weight loss drugs.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, so it's,
Um,
I was reading, there was a good article in the Atlantic, and I can't remember. There's obviously been a multitude of like weight loss drugs that have come out. It's been a problem like since obesity has become on the rise since like the 70s and 80s. And some of the drugs have been kind of like fads. They've come through and then haven't really made it. Some of the drugs have been found to have, I mean, severe side effects or even, cancers later, that we
right.
didn't know about until people take it. Some of the drug, I mean, I still remember, I think when I was like young, it was like ephedrine, that was like the
Yeah.
big weight loss, like just, okay, just take a stimulant. And so, there's two things. As a physician, it's interesting. Like if I have to choose, obesity is like the number one cause of what I see precipitates most metabolic disease. I mean that's just the way it is. Like especially the younger that you are.
Right.
As soon as people start to become obese, like the disease is started. And so part of me, as a physician, is like if we can give someone a pill or a shot or a way to try to get that weight off to keep us from paying in dollars what it's going to cost when this person has hypertension and then diabetes and then kidney disease from that, and then what it's going to pay for us to have to keep this person on dialysis. From a cost perspective, you're like, that's great. We got to by any means necessary, right? Like because it's going to cost us so much money as a society and healthcare to like the obesity just costs. But then on the other side of it, there's obviously the part of me that looks at it and is like, how sustainable is it? And two, are these going to be similar to the other drugs where we only start to see the side effects once a large population of people takes the drug, and then we figure out through the scientific process what the side effects are, and what are the risks. So it's hard. Like, how can I counsel people on a medicine that hasn't really been released, to the population to be studied in a large sense as of yet, for us to really truly capture what the risks and benefits are. But on the other side of the coin, I also see how much money we're I see, I mean, America spends most of its money on trying to keep people well, and when we're the worst at it, we're so unhealthy.
Right. Yeah.
And so I also understand the desperation for these companies to try to find something, because if people aren't going to be able to use traditional methods, which is using nutrition and using exercise to lose weight, then how are we going to get the weight off of people so that we can prevent chronic disease? So I don't know. It's a love-hate relationship when they started coming out. It's hard to know, I guess. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how effective it is. We'll see how many people
Do you
keep the
know?
weight off.
So like when it comes to the GLP-1s,
Hmm.
like how's that work? I mean,
So essentially, what's the easiest way? It gives you Most of these drugs are aimed at trying to give you a feeling of satiety so that you're not reaching for more calories. Like that's the main goal of most of the drugs that we see right now. I mean, we've had drugs on the market that have, like, altered certain pathways, or like, like there's obviously been stimulants that simply, speed up your basal metabolic rate so that you're burning more calories. But the name of the game, I think, recently has been, how can we try to impart a feeling of satiety on people so that they're reaching for less food? So how can we control food intake? How do we get people to decrease their food intake? Which I think is great, because for the majority of the population, we probably need to decrease food intake. Food is readily available and it's hyper palatable, so it's like,
right.
it's really hard to eat a pound of bell peppers, but it's not difficult to smash like a case of White Castle.
Yeah.
So like, from a broad perspective, it's like, how can we just get people to have less food, which I think is good in some ways, but it's not really. Is it like, will it teach people like like to be more food literate? Maybe not. Does it teach people what type of food to reach for when they're hungry? Probably not. Are we going to control like sugar cravings, or when people are constantly taking in too much added sugar? Maybe not. So like, if the goal is just to try to decrease food intake, then great, that's something. But it's hard to believe that this will be hyper successful when it doesn't get at all of the underlying problems that people have with food, right? Like,
Right.
there's even a large portion of people that are just addicted to food. That's something that has to be dealt with, like, even through therapy. I mean, that's not something that you probably can just get a medicine and hopefully people lean on food for emotional support and for feeling good, or for sadness, and that requires a whole different prong of of
Right.
medicine, from psychology. So a lot of these, I'm like, I'm hopeful, but I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not optimistic, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm hopeful, but I'm not optimistic.
And even when you see some of these patients, I mean, you don't have time. You don't even have time to sit down and say, "Hey, like, what have you eaten this week?" Like, you just don't have time for it. Hold on, you're cutting out. Hold on. Settings. Audio. Uh-oh. Can you hear me? No? Can you hear me? This is where I lose followers on my podcast. Hold on. Let's try this again. Audio.
Is it me you can't hear, or is it?
Mhm.
Oh, got to go back to the old school, like
Dang it.
corded, right?
Hold on.
No.
All right, talk now.
Okay. I said you got to go back to the old school corded one.
Still no. All right, we're back. What were we talking about?
We were talking about GLP-1 inhibitors and
Yes.
weight loss.
Yes.
Yeah. So like I said,
GLP-1.
I'm like hopeful, but I'm not optimistic, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that like the GLP-1, because your body naturally makes GLP-1, correct? Like it's a hormone in your body, and like, is that kind of what
It's been a little
maybe?
while since I've looked at that. Let me see. Let me Google.
Yeah, let's Google it. And then because
Yeah. So
my understanding is that it's kind of regulating. It's essentially regulating that blood sugar and
right.
also, lowering your cravings so you're not eating, an entire White Castle.
Right. So yes, it mimics hormones that we would otherwise endogenously we would make in our bodies. So we're sort of giving the body this extra hormone to try to deal with, feelings of satiety and regulating blood sugar.
Right. Okay.
Which, in people who have, diabetes or whatever that need help regulating their blood sugar, obviously it's helpful. I think in weight loss, a large portion of it has been regulating blood sugar and feelings of satiety, for trying to decrease overall food intake as well.
Right. It's interesting.
Yeah. And so I think, like I said, some of the biggest, I think it's really going to remain to be seen whether it's sustainable. I mean, I've seen quite a few people that have had incredible results, incredible results with it.
Yeah.
Will be interesting if they go off of it, I guess, and are able to maintain those results. It'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see the subtypes of patients that do well with it. I mean, are these going to be the patients who may have underlying issues with food, and are those people going to benefit from it as much as somebody who, say, just doesn't have as much of an addiction to food? I don't know. I mean, I don't think
Yeah.
anybody can answer that yet. I don't think anybody can answer how efficacious they are yet. I mean, like I said, I'm hopeful, but there's a large part of me that also would really love if we could have better fitness and health literacy and just do this and get people in like sustainable lifelong habits from a younger age, namely through, again, like understanding nutrition and moving and being happy to exercise in whatever form that is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's weird because we're just in when you look at it from a long-term perspective, I couldn't even tell you where to start. It's just like, yeah, I can run into someone at, the local Kroger or Walmart. And
Sure.
if we start talking, people will be like, "Oh, you own a gym?" I'll be like, "Yeah, you should work out." Right. But like, I mean, like other than that, getting a large group of people who just naturally don't work out or eat right,
Right.
and trying to get an entire nation to do that is extremely difficult.
Oh my God. I mean, if anybody, I don't even know, I was thinking about the other day, I went to the store, and so we like naturally in medical school, obviously I ate like shit.
Yeah.
Just absolutely horrible. But we've kind of were away from that. So we don't keep anything in the house that's like hyper palatable anymore, like not even cereal, because I could smash like cinnamon toast crunch
For
all
sure.
day. We
Yeah.
just don't keep any of it in there. And so as I was walking through like the aisles and I'm looking at all this like junk, right? And I'm just like, there was this part of me that thought, not that I would ever want to take away people's free will, but it seems like we're in such a hole that the only way to make it better is to stop offering this. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
people help themselves. We're just like evolutionary animals. You know what I mean? Like whatever feels good
Yeah.
is, we're just going to go in and do it. And it's like, we're almost to the level where disease is so rampant and everyone is so sick that it's like, should we just, I mean, we'd never be able to
Start
do it
over.
all the food
Just
companies
start over.
take this all away. Like, just no one gets any cereal anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, nobody gets any
Yeah.
candy. Like everyone, you can't
Yeah.
have it anymore because we've already shown that we can't. We can't regulate ourselves with it. I'm semi healthy and I'm a physician and I can't regulate myself around that kind of food.
Yeah,
It's
it's
for
like when
I
people
can
I mean, when people have little kids, like
Yeah.
they tell their you know what I mean? They tell their kids like, "Hey, you've had too much candy today. You can't have any more."
And then they go eat
And just
like 3 pints of Ben& and Jerry's, and it's like, "Wait a
yeah,
minute."
I know. They're like, "You can't have that anymore." Yeah,
We
we need to
already
do that with adults. When you go to
Yeah,
Kroger, you can only buy you only
right.
have enough you're only allowed to buy, like, enough ice cream for a couple days.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, those are the weird, like, thought experiments that I have when I walk down, and I'm just like, "Man, so much of this food is just I mean, it's just
Yeah,
shit. That
yeah.
it is shit in a can for people to eat, and then, like, everyone is
And I
sick."
think it goes back to, like, what you were saying, though, about just educating people on what's good and what's bad, right?
Right,
Like, I
right.
mean, like, I'll eat pizza, I'll have some
Sure,
drinks,
of course,
right? Like,
of course.
but I understand, you know, portion control. I
Right,
understand, hey, if I have a pizza and a couple drinks, I'm not going to continuously do that day in
right,
and day out.
right,
And I know like what's good and what's bad and kind of how to regulate that in my lifestyle. But I feel like a
right,
lot of people just don't. So it's
right,
just about educating people. Um, you know, and it goes back to what we said at the beginning, trying to bridge the gap between health and fitness and medical
right.
and getting people to understand that they're not really the same,
Yep.
but
Yeah,
they
they're not the same, but
they're not even close to being the same, but they can be. Um, but yeah, like I said, I don't have the answer for that.
I mean, I wish I
Um,
did. If we did, we wouldn't that we would be, like, obviously rich. I mean, who can solve, like, this problem? I think that gyms have a
yeah,
really good handle on the difference that you can make is the one that you're already doing, which is like, how can we get people to just exercise? I mean, I
yeah,
know for me, like before I started CrossFit, I was not very healthy. I mean, at all. Like I was lucky that I never struggled with obesity. I was always small, but like I was a smoker. I probably
yeah,
drank too much. I ate terribly. I mean, whatever I could eat in medical school. And
yeah,
literally just by walking in to CrossFit, all of the other things started to kind of fall away. Like I didn't want to eat like shit because it made me feel worse the next day. And so it was just like that one thing sort of snowballed, and then eventually like I'm not going to smoke. Like why am I smoking? My lungs are
yeah,
already on fire. You know what I'm like
yeah,
I don't want to do that. And so I think if the problem is we just only capture like a small subset of people in it, right? I mean, we can't get
yeah,
everybody. But I think for me, like that's essentially how it started was like, if I can move more, then I'll feel better. And when I feel better, I don't want to eat poorly. And when I don't eat poorly, I don't want to do other things that are bad for my body, like smoking or drinking all the time, or, staying up until 3 o'clock in the morning and only getting 3 hours of sleep. Stuff like that.
yeah,
But it starts with like, how can we get people to just do one thing? Which if I had to pick for anybody, it would be movement, even over nutrition. If I could get people to move, it would regulate their blood sugar levels as well. And hopefully, and hopefully start
yeah,
something. Because most of the diseases I see are it's a lack of movement. Most people that are going into the nursing home, it's a lack of movement um, that
for
keeps
sure.
people sick.
Yeah, we started this thing at the beginning of the year. It's mainly like a challenge every single day because I did the 75 hard and it's like,
I saw that.
yeah, it's like you pretty much do 2 workouts a day for 45 minutes, right? And
Yeah.
I'm like, people don't need to do that. Like right now, like people don't need to do that. But if I could get people to just move for 45 minutes every day, some sort of
Anything.
movement, go out and go
Literally
for a
anything.
walk, like
Yep.
just literally for 45 minutes and everyone has 45 minutes. If I can just do
Yes.
that and I can just get at least the members at my gym to just build day after day, then at
Right.
least I'm creating healthy habits with the people
Yeah.
that are here.
Yep.
Um, yeah,
Yep.
I posted something not too long ago too, and it said, "Go join your local CrossFit gym and tell them you want to join for the next 20 years."
Yeah.
And like, And that's another hard thing for people to wrap their head around,
Yeah.
right? Like if someone goes to the doctor and they go to their primary care physician, I think that they're trying to build a rapport with that
Mhm.
person to
Right.
where now they have this lifetime doctor. When they need something, they can call them,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
But when someone goes into a gym, they're like, I'm going to try to lose weight for the next 3 months, or I'm going to try to, maybe get a six pack for
Sure.
the summer.
Yeah.
I don't think that most people walk into the gym thinking, I want to live a healthy lifestyle for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to go in and this is just going to be my place, right? I'm going to
Yeah.
go in ups and downs and,
Yeah.
ebbs and flows and things like that. But no one's like, hey, just sign me up and, I'm going to be here for
For
until I
20
die,
years.
for 20 years, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm going to be
Until
here unless I move, like just keep charging me or like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
but people will be like, oh, well, I got my six pack or, they move
Yeah.
or I see plenty of people and then they move away or they
Yeah.
just don't join another gym.
Yep. Or worse
It's
yet, kind of the famous, like, I went 2 times a week and I didn't lose the 10 pounds that I said I was gonna lose, and so now I give up.
yeah,
Which is, I think, which is a lot of people versus, yeah, how can we change the paradigm to make people see, like, do you wanna be in a nursing home when you're 50? No?
yeah,
And, like, join a CrossFit gym and just move. Literally go every day and do only the scaled stuff. Literally go every day and do half of the scaled movements. Don't even care. Like,
yeah,
go to the CrossFit gym and walk around in circles if you can do none of the movements for 45
yeah,
minutes. Like, do anything because I think people don't understand until it's too late that, like, if you do nothing, you are headed to a nursing home. And again, like in America, you don't want to be there. They're not great places right now.
right, yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, it is not. And so I think over time, like, my like journey kind of changed too. Like when I first started, I was just like, I need to do something, like, because I'm depressed, I'm overweight, I'm smoking, I'm drinking too often, and I'm not sleeping. It's totally morphed into like, my only goal at this point, above like wanting to lift, wanting to hit certain weights, obviously I want to do some of that. My only goal at this point is to be like the oldest person that's not in a nursing home.
for
Like, that is
sure.
that is all I care about. I want to be the oldest, fittest person that I can possibly be. Like, if I could still clean at age 90, even if it's a training bar and I'm back in a diaper and I'm
Yeah,
peeing my pants while I'm doing it, I don't care. Like, I will take it because the alternative is so much worse. But like you said, getting people to see that, if I could just get America to shadow me and see like what the alternative is, I
yeah,
mean, like, I think people would change their perspective. Like, people always say that to me, how are you so dedicated? How do you get in? I'm like, man, I would say 70% of the days I feel 50% or less when I
yeah,
go in terms of like, am I rested? Do I feel good? Have I gotten everything I needed? But that's fine. Like, I don't go in every day and just like hulking out, hitting PRs, like Ronnie Coleman, like lightweight. That's
yeah,
not every
yeah,
day. It's like
right,
4% of days.
right. I think what it is for a lot of people is I think that people struggle to like face adversity.
We could talk about
Just
that for sure. Yeah.
just like people just don't want to face adversity when it comes to certain things. And signing up for the gym is seems like such a difficult task that most people don't want to overcome at first.
Right.
And most people don't look at it like you said, like go into a CrossFit gym and walk circles, like just
Yeah,
walk around in circles and talk to people. And then
literally.
eventually you're going to start doing air squats while
Right,
you're talking to the same people. And then
right.
eventually maybe you'll do a pull up and maybe
Yeah,
you'll do a deadlift, right?
sure.
And I think that the biggest thing though is most people just struggle facing adversity with anything in life. I mean,
Yeah,
anything, and the gym is part of that.
yeah. What's so
So,
interesting though is like when people if we can get people to struggle with adversity in the gym, and how I think Huberman Lab talked about, this is not as scientific as them, I wish. I'm like sitting here
yeah.
trying to remember what GLP-1 is. you know.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine.
Hopefully our listeners aren't expecting like well, I'm the
Yeah.
bottom rate. You know, these are the docs that
It would
don't.
only be better if you were smoking a cigarette and having a drink during this podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he had talked about how there's like there's modeling in the brain that happens when you face something adverse, and like certain areas of your brain actually grow in size or become more, they increase in plasticity from being able to handle adversity. And I think it's human nature. Like human nature is to avoid pain. Like that's what we evolved to do. And so that was like really useful when we had to do that. But unfortunately, like I see it a lot. Like we've gone so far the other direction in terms of avoiding pain. And I could go off like on that forever, but we see like all the time, people like break a bone, and so our first thing that we do is like we just throw like pain meds at it, right? Which is fine. Like we need to control some form of pain. We have the ability to do it, but people's expectation of pain is so different. Like you broke something and it hurts, right? So like that's pain isn't necessarily like a horrifically negative thing. It's like your body telling you that something's off and trying to adapt and overcome. Like it's something that you can work through. And I think, as a medical field where we really went overboard and caused an opioid epidemic was, management of pain and really centering on pain as like the number one thing to focus on. Whereas like if we focus on like, was it painful? Maybe, but like, did you get better at the end of it? Like what if we focus on like outcome based things instead of just like, well, how painful was it during? I don't know, but the new wave, that's for better or worse, like this is the new wave of like people struggle really. We've evolved so well and done so well that people don't have to face pain on a daily basis most of the
Yeah.
time from a physical standpoint. And so, going to the gym and being uncomfortable is very difficult for people to do. But I think the best thing you can do is go face pain. And then when you have pain in your life from other things, you're more well equipped to deal with what that feels like.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. That people don't want to be uncomfortable, I guess, except for some psychos like me that I
Yeah.
think it's the coolest thing ever when my body wants to give out and want like, how far can I push my mind to like make it? Because most of the time it's just your mind is the one that stop. Like you can say my legs hurt, my lungs hurt, whatever. I think it's fun to try to find that line.
Yeah,
But I
for sure.
didn't always. It was only because I like went one day and I still remember the workout, and I still remember finishing last in your gym and
Yeah.
everybody like looking around, and I was just like, oh God, oh God.
Yeah. No, that
Dying.
was me. That was me today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still.
No, and what I find, I was talking to another guy about this too. Um, once you hit a certain point too, there's just times that you're not going to hit PRs all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, of
That
course.
is a rough spot for people to be. It's
Yeah.
a rough place mentally to just
Yeah.
say, like, I know my numbers, but I'm just not gonna hit those anymore.
Really
Like
interesting. Do
like
you
it's
feel like
a
like with you're talking about like for your like certain lifts, like where you're like, I think that I've
well, like
probably done what I can do in terms of being
yeah,
able to
so
beat the number.
yeah, so if someone comes in and I say, "Yeah, you're gonna join for the next 20 years,"
Yeah.
right? Like that's in my head.
Yeah.
Well, what happens when someone first starts is they start hitting PRs on everything, right?
Yeah.
You're
True.
hitting like just naturally your body is getting stronger,
Yeah.
your like your central nervous system is getting, more
Yeah.
equipped to lift heavy things and carry things across the room, right? So you're going to see PRs, personal records for quite some time when you first start.
Sure.
And
Very true.
then life happens, stress happens,
Yeah.
right? Like, so all of a sudden you've got a max back squat, you've got your deadlift, you've got your snatch, your clean and jerk, like everything's great and you're feeling awesome. And things just happen. Maybe you're not coming in, 6 days a week, you're coming in 4, 3,
Sure.
right? And you're
Yeah.
just not going to hit those numbers anymore.
Right.
Like, how do you measure success? And how do you continue to come back day after day knowing it's like you said, I want to be able to clean the training bar when I'm 90, but
Sure.
you're not going to be able to measure that. Like, you're
Very
gonna
true.
decline at some point,
Yep.
but you have to just keep showing up and saying, "Today's not a PR day." Like, I'm just
Yeah.
gonna move, and that's a and that's a place too, and that's mainly for people that work out all the time, right? It's like, I mean, we're talking about the majority of the people that need to get in the gym, and,
Right.
I'm talking about the woes of the people that, they come in and they're like, "Oh, I'm not hitting PRs."
Yep.
But I find that some people are like, I'm just they're not motivated
Yeah.
once they I don't wanna say peak, but
Yeah, plateau,
they kinda
or
plateau and they're
yeah.
okay just being this super strong mom or dad at,
Yeah.
like you're like, "Oh, well, now I have 3 kids, but I'm still, deadlifting 300 pounds." It's like, "Well, that's really good." They're like,
Yeah.
"I know, but I was doing 350." It's like, "Well, you have 3 kids and you deadlift 300." Like, that's good. That's better than the majority of the people, but that's,
Right.
it's
I
it's
think
a hard
well,
place for people to be.
right. I think what CrossFit did so well, and what I wish was more like transparent, and what I wish kind of came forward in their face more, that they present is like the sense of community that people have when they come to the gym. I think is like the one of the most important things that keeps people coming back, because like you said, what do you do once? I mean, I know like it's going to happen for me at some point. I'm not going to hit a clean PR anymore. Like it's just not going to happen. Like there's going to be a point
Right.
where that happens. That's
Yeah.
okay, because a large part of the reason I still go is because I'm around super fit people that I really care about, that I talk to every day, that are also my friends. And so that sense of community, I think, can keep people coming back long after kind of the sexy part where it's like, yeah, I got my first
Right.
bar muscle up, or I got my first, when like things probably do where you do plateau. I mean, when
For
I'm
sure.
60, I'm probably not going to snatch more than when I'm 30. I hope so. I'm going to try. Like I'm going to like fight very hard to make that happen.
Yeah.
But you have to have a reason outside of that. And I think CrossFit did really well when they figured out, like, if we put people in group classes together and give them community and give them a way to like push each other and push themselves, then we'll probably have more success. I think they still have that paradigm right. And I think that's still something in order to bridge the gap between like medicine and fitness, we really have to figure out how to get communities, like the community, involved in being more fit as a community. Because if
Right.
you're talking about like individual motivation or effort, as we've already shown, like that's variable and changes from year to year and points in time in the year and person to person, and it's not reliable.
Right. Yeah. Um, cool. Man, we're at an hour.
I
This
know
is
that went
great.
fast, dude.
I know. I like to keep it around an hour.
Yeah.
So to end, um, maybe some fun, maybe not so fun, but since you're an ER doctor, what's like the craziest, maybe not death, like what's the
Yeah.
craziest thing that you've seen in the
Hmm.
last few years at the ER?
In the last few, I'm trying to think
Or
like,
just in general as an ER doctor? I think that's like the most extreme, right? Like you see the I don't want to say the worst of the worst, but like people come in and they're not coming in for their annual checkup, right?
right.
So
Yeah.
like, so
I
what's like the
mean,
craziest thing you've seen?
I think some of the craziest what's a way to I can say it and be like HIPAA protected. There are people sometimes let infections go in their body to incredible like just you wonder how like someone has this like rotting hole in their body, and like what has kind of happened to make, like, and some of it, unfortunately, like some of it comes with significant like mental illness as well. But it's always fascinating to see, like, we are just kind of like a bag of meat, and so like
Yeah.
when you see like some like things like rotting off of a body, it really gives you this perspective of like, man, I am just like so grateful that like my body is okay today, because some of the things that you see are just insane. Like the infections that people can live through, or just like fist size areas of things like rotting off. I mean, it is, so I would say some of the craziest things I've seen have come with, just like limbs rotting off, and you realize like how fragile how fragile
Right.
how fragile your body is and like what it can go through. And it's a testament to like medicine that we can keep people alive during some of the most insane things where you're just kind of like, man, that is, you wouldn't think it would be survivable, I guess. I think those are some of the
So
crazier.
people just like wait too long.
I
They're
mean,
like,
some of
it'll be
it's
fine. Like they put some
yeah,
like
yeah, like some of it's
antibiotics. And,
yeah, waiting too long. And then I think also just like what it comes down to again in terms of like we don't have a lot of health literacy. I mean, people are just we
yeah.
are just not a health literate society for whatever reason. And so I think people can really tend to underestimate what is happening. And so for them, like they'll look at it and be like, "Oh, it's probably not a big deal." And then, like someone will come in and I'll be like, "Oh, man, like this is really overwhelming,"
Right.
Um, and obviously, like I said, there are also some really, really unfortunate cases of people who, when we see like severe mental illness that have no understanding of what their body is doing, or they're not in the same reality as we are. And those are some of the really unfortunate cases where you see like, limbs rotting off. And that also gives you this respect for understanding like how I guess how lucky I am that my brain is working to where I can be aware of things, and just really gives you this like respect for how sick people can be and how bad mental illness can be, where people are
Right.
not sharing the same reality as you, and that's more prevalent than you would, I guess, than you would think. I
Yeah.
mean, some of the more crazy things without getting into stuff that would violate like HIPAA in terms
Yeah,
of
for sure.
specific cases that would be almost recognizable.
Yeah.
Those are some of the more crazy aspects of like, obviously you see crazy social dynamics too between people. Um, People are just different. People can be very odd.
Yeah.
Like you see like the full range of humanity and just it's like it takes all kinds of kinds, but people can be very odd.
Yeah. 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 Keeping your faith in humanity, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I
Or
mean,
or lack thereof.
or a lack thereof, yes. It's different. I mean, there's definitely, I think what's funny is like I think ER has kind of the highest rate of burnout for a reason, but you're exposed to kind of the general public and that range of things all the time. But I had tried to describe what I do, and obviously I do medicine, but we're kind of like the bouncers of medicine in the ER.
Right.
Like we're like, are you sick enough to come in the hospital? And then you also have like a lot of social issues that are coming through the door and just extraneous silly things that don't really have anything to do with medicine. But some days you kind of feel more like a bouncer than a medical
Yeah.
professional.
Yeah, I was reading a book last week, and it was saying that doctors have the highest rate of burnout from anything, and ER doctors for sure.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel it too. I've already had to do like a few courses to try to keep myself more grounded. I think, but it's because you're just kind of dealing. I mean, you're dealing with humanity, right, in its raw
Yeah.
form, and that can be really amazing in some ways, and then in other ways, it can be extraordinarily difficult and some days like impossible, you
Yeah.
know? Like where you just feel like it's impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this has been fun.
This
Thanks
is
for coming
fun.
on. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's fun.
absolutely.
I'll have to bring you on again, and we can
Yeah, I
talk
would love
more
to do
about
it again.
yeah, we'll talk more about bridging the gap between fitness and medical.
Yeah, I'll think about it and
So,
see, yeah, if we can solve the problem for the entire world, that would be great.
yeah, yeah,
Then we're both out of a job though. Well,
I
maybe
know.
not you, but I would be.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, that's totally fine. So, well, I appreciate you coming on, and
Yeah,
we'll
definitely.
chat soon.
Sounds good, man. I'll see ya.
Thanks. See ya.
Bye.